Hello viewers. Welcome to my channel Story Shop. Everyone enjoy the story nicely. Let's get started. My name is Brian. My wife of 18 years ended up being unfaithful. There were signs, and I'm sure others knew before I did. But that whole love is blind thing, it's real. Since we'll be discussing her in some detail, let me give you a bit of background. Diane is a Southern girl, born and raised. She's the middle child of 5, 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. Growing up, they weren't exactly poor, but money was tight. Her dad worked hard laying bricks, and they managed okay, but there wasn't much extra for luxuries. This matters to give you a sense of her upbringing. When we met, Diane was shy and lacking in confidence. She was still a bit of a quiet, reserved girl. I wish I hadn't been the one to change that. When we first met, she was a 5 feet 4 inches brunette with blue eyes and a slender frame. Her figure was petite, but her proportions were just right. I've always appreciated a person's overall appearance, not just one feature. She had a pretty face, even though she inherited her family's trait of a weak jaw. It gave her a slightly buck-toothed look, though she had nice, pretty teeth. The first thing she wanted to fix when we could afford it was her jaw. I have to admit, after the surgery, she went from being just a pretty girl to someone truly beautiful. And I wasn't the only one who noticed. That should have been a red flag, but it wasn't, not at the time. That blind thing again. One thing that always struck me as odd was how she responded to compliments. When I told her something like, "Your new hairstyle really flatters your face," she'd just say, "Thanks, hun," and maybe give me a quick kiss on the cheek. Same with clothes, shoes, anything. But if someone else complimented her, she'd light up. It never really made sense to me, but I just figured that when it came from me, it was expected and didn't hold as much value. This wasn't all bad, however, since after she would get these unsolicited compliments, she was usually in a pretty good mood. And the saying goes, if mama isn't happy, then nobody's happy. But it did get somewhat tiresome after a while. I know that as her husband I am expected to say nice things and all that, but I did truly mean what I told her. And really it didn't start out that bad. She'd get a compliment from some random guy, and it would just cheer her up and not much else. Then she got to like and expect the attention. So once the bills were caught up, she decided she wanted to have a breast augmentation. Only that's not the way it was presented at first. In the beginning it was sold as something for me. Comments like, "Would you like it if my jugs were bigger?" Now, if you've never had to go through this, count yourself lucky. I took the stand early on that there was nothing about her body that needed to be changed, enhanced, or whatever else you might call it. I said I believed she was sexy and beautiful just as she was. So the tack changed to, "Would you be okay if I had it done for me?" And just what can you say to that? I still felt it was a big expense and some risk for something I really felt she did not need. And she did it, of course. Having the augmentation did seem to be good for her. And once she was fully healed, I will admit that the sex was off the charts. There were benefits to her transformation that I hadn't expected. For one, she seemed much more confident than before. I know it sounds strange even now, but when I look back, there was a clear difference in how she carried herself. Small things stood out, like how she used to be self-conscious and reserved, but afterward, she seemed comfortable and at ease, even in moments that might have made her shy before. Her newfound confidence wasn't just evident in private moments. It was noticeable in how she interacted with the world around her. She started embracing herself more fully, and it was heartwarming to see her bloom into someone who genuinely loved how she looked. Her self-esteem seemed to take a turn for the better, which was especially remarkable given everything she had gone through during the jaw reconstruction process. The changes didn't go unnoticed by others either. People would occasionally comment on how great she looked, and those compliments, while simple, seemed to lift her spirits even more. While the transformation benefited her the most, I can't deny how wonderful it was to witness her confidence grow. Out in the world, her new appearance wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about how she finally felt comfortable in her own skin. It was clear that this new chapter in her life was about much more than appearances. It was about becoming the best version of herself and learning to embrace that fully. The changes, however, made her seem more confident, more attractive, and just more noticeable. The compliments after her jaw surgery were much easier for me to accept than the attention she received after the breast enhancement. The comments were often inappropriate and frequently crossed the line into uncomfortable territory. What bothered me more was that she seemed to enjoy it. Her new dresses and blouses often featured more daring necklines, and the dresses themselves seemed shorter. Since she didn't mind the attention, it only encouraged others to become bolder. People I thought were my friends would openly flirt with her, and if I said anything about it, I was the one who ended up looking bad. One night we were in a club, and after a while it dawned on me Diane had a beer in her hand every time that I saw her, but she didn't have her purse with her, and I hadn't paid for one of them. I asked her how she had been getting them, and she laughed, and said she had shown the bartender her jugs for each one. We had a long talk about that one the next day, but I knew it didn't sink in. She absolutely loved it. When she was drinking, I had to watch her at all times, or some clown would simply ask to see them, and she would oblige. Her behavior was getting embarrassing at times, and when I told her that she offered to go by herself, so I wouldn't be embarrassed, yeah, like that was a real option. As her flirting and flashing happened more often, so did our fighting, and I was tired of guys openly ogling her in front of me, so I asked her to tone it down and show me some respect. I told her I loved her, and that I understood how the attention made her feel, but she needed to understand how it made me feel, and for a while she did. She still dressed sexy, still flirted but in a more subdued manner, and she still enjoyed the attention, but there weren't any flashes that I knew of. We were doing well, and things seemed to have settled down at least outside the bedroom. Inside our bedroom, she was still my dream come true, and since the fighting had stopped, the sex had been very good. And then she met Sophia. Sophia started working with Diane about a year after the enhancement, and about 6 or 7 months after she had finally toned down the public shows. I had a bad feeling about Sophia the first time I met her, but there was no way I was going to win in that fight. Diane had taken on a mentor-type role with the new girl, and felt she needed to help her get settled not just at work, but in her new city as well. This inevitably led to them being off on lunch dates and shopping trips to finally girls' nights out. Let me tell you that a single friend is the biggest danger a marriage can have on either side. Single, younger, very pretty, and just a bit wild single girlfriends are deadly. And Sophia was all of that in triplicate. The first couple girls' nights out were not bad. Diane came home at a reasonable hour, and while she had been drinking, didn't seem drunk. I know she flirted and danced those nights because she nearly screwed me to death afterward, but who's going to complain? Then the nights out began to occur more often and last longer, and we were beginning to argue about them. I was sure her new friend was a bad influence, but didn't know just how bad. I tried asking just general questions about the nights out, and Diane immediately became guarded. There had to be more to the story. I had to know what was going on, and nobody was going to tell me, so I did what any guy would do under the circumstances. I followed them one night. They went to a club that Diane had always said was too young for us, meaning the crowd was much younger than us. It was, however, just the right age for Sophia, and Diane being a little older woman by herself wasn't going to be a problem. Me, well, I was going to stand out something awful in there. Gritting my teeth, I waited until they had been inside for a little while before going in. The place was fairly well packed, especially near the dance floor, but I managed to get a spot at the bar where I could see most of the club. Now, it might have been only 20 minutes since they had come in, but there they were in a booth by the dance floor with 2 guys. Sophia was sitting with some blonde-haired surfer clone on one side, and Diane sat across the table from her with a dark-haired and dark-skinned man, or should I say boy. He looked barely old enough to drink. There were all sorts of things wrong with this picture, and the alarm bells in my head were so loud they drowned out the music. I wanted to go over and confront her, but did not want the fight it would cause. If she was just flirting and dancing, we could talk through it later. If it was a date or something more, our relationship wasn't likely to survive it. So I took a wait-and-see approach and hoped for the best. And I saw the worst. It didn't take long, really. The first dance was a slow number, and he was all over her. They danced for maybe the first minute, and dry humped the rest of the song. His hands went wherever they wanted, and his tongue spent as much time in her mouth as it did his. Sophia and her guy were no better, but she wasn't my concern. My only problem was what to do about Diane. I needed to stop this. Actually, I needed to try and get her to stop it. We had argued earlier, and I thought I might use that to text her and apologize, and hopefully convince her to come home before she did something we could not overcome. When she finally stopped humping his leg and sat back at the table, I quickly sent a message, saying sorry we were fighting again. I love you. From where I was sitting, I could see her look at her phone and pick it up. After she read the message, she just placed the phone back on the table. Not a good start. As a last chance for her to save us, I sent this message, please come home. Or at least call me so we can talk, and then I watched and waited. Finally, I could see her tapping on the phone and hope for the best. What I got was I'll be home later having fun with the girls. And after she sent that, she turned to her date and kissed him. That turned into a heavy petting session that didn't allow me to believe that they hadn't already had sex together. Even if they hadn't before, it looked a sure thing tonight. My world was collapsing in front of me, and I knew we were done. She had gone to a place we couldn't come back from. Truth is, seeing her with him told me that no matter what she had or hadn't done, I could never have faith in her again. And without faith, there is no marriage. The next dance was a fast-paced number, but somehow it felt even more intense than the first. She moved with energy, drawing closer to him as they danced. People around them were watching curiously, but she didn't seem to mind. The dance ended with her sharing a brief kiss with Sophia. The two guys exchanged gestures with each girl. They then returned to the table where the atmosphere remained lively. I watched as the moment unfolded, noticing my wife leaning closer to him, her body language indicating a deep connection. Her head rested against the booth cushion, eyes closed, and she seemed to be fully immersed in the moment. It was clear their interaction had captured the attention of others in the bar, with people nudging each other and pointing toward the scene. Nearby, Sophia and her date were equally absorbed, creating an atmosphere where the four seemed entirely in their own world. As I crossed the room, I arrived at the table just as she seemed completely immersed in their exchange. She was so focused on him that she didn't even notice when I reached out and grabbed her hand, pulling her attention back to reality. It wasn't until my grandmother's wedding ring began slipping off her finger that she realized I was standing there. When her eyes flew open, I had the ring in my hand. I pocketed the family heirloom and proceeded to slip the gold band from my own ring finger. She was still trying to recover from both her climax and shock when my ring bounced across the table in front of her. Today's cars are vastly superior to those made just a decade ago. My Taurus SHO will allow you to put an amazing amount of distance between objects in just minutes. I was miles away before the phone rang. I rejected the call, of course. It was a bit too late to talk now. I went home, back to the house that used to be our home, and threw some things in a bag I might need in the next couple days. And in no more than 15 minutes, I was on my way to somewhere else. As I hit the on-ramp of the interstate, the phone rang, and I hit the hands-free button to reject it. It was her, of course. I pressed the power button on the phone and shut it off. It would become ugly if I talked to her right now. All I knew was I needed to be alone and think. My mind is an analytical mind. All my life, people have told me they envy my ability to solve problems so quickly. But it's a curse, really, because it simply cannot ignore a problem. There will be no rest until it solves a problem. So, while the machine in my head chews the data and shifts the puzzle pieces around, I drive headed nowhere in particular. The problem is no matter which way the pieces are arranged, they will not mesh together. My mind knows what is wrong. It's obvious, really, the pieces that represent anger and hurt are way too large to fit, and the piece that represents love has shrunk greatly. The piece that was trust is missing in action, and it won't be just a matter of looking under the table for it. But therein lies the problem. Hurt and anger could easily fill the spots left vacant by love and trust. Trust is gone, but love, although shrunken, is still there. Love isn't a switch you just flip too often forget. I had loved her through all of the times we were together. I loved her when I was angry at her for showing her jugs to the barman. I loved her when she ignored my compliments and adored those from others. And I loved her when she seemed to move past all of that. I may not have liked her or how she acted at times, but I loved her. Love isn't just a remembrance of the good times, but also remembering the difficult times and overcoming them as a team. So there's the problem my mind faces. The pieces will not fit, but it knows they always fit before now, so it stubbornly tries to force them to fit. So I drive just following the headlights as the machine churns and tries to make it all better. Happy times float across the back of my eyes as the machine tries to reduce the hurt and anger pieces. But each passing is only a temporary relief, and the pieces seem to swell larger after each attempt. Gradually, the real world forces its presence on me, and I realize several things. First is I need to find a restroom with some urgency. Second is the car needs gas. Third is I have no idea where I am. And lastly, that I have been fortunate thus far to not have killed myself or others driving in my near-zombie state. For the first time in recent months, luck is with me, and I found the three things I needed most in life. A gas station to fill one tank and empty another, a fair selection of cookie-cutter chain hotels, and a liquor store. I checked into one of the hotels after getting a large bottle of rum. I know me in my mind. Like I mentioned earlier, there would be no peace until the pieces all fit, and they can't fit right now. It will be a long time before they truly fit together again. So the only other option is to try and scramble all the inputs enough that the mind will shut down from the bad data. It worked in some ways, because the next thing I remember was severe disorientation when I woke up and found myself in a strange room. For a few moments, there was only the puzzle of how the hell I ended up there to work on. But once the pieces of that puzzle started to make a picture, it was an ugly sight. The image shifted and morphed through a series of painful memories. Horrible visions of her with him, laughing together, then holding hands, and images of moments I couldn't bear to relive flooded my mind. I began to cry, and I couldn't tell you how long that lasted. I do know it was long into the morning before I dragged myself into the shower and finally got dressed. I needed coffee in the worst way. My head still ached from the rum, and I understood that I needed to eat something even if there didn't seem much point to it. Like most places in the South where there are hotels, there was a Waffle House. The coffee helped immensely, and having some greasy eggs and bacon to help absorb the leftover alcohol did wonders. In the harsh light of the new day, I came to some conclusions. They sucked, but there didn't seem to be many options left. First was that I needed to call her and get the nasty business started. I already know there were only a couple ways this could go. One, she could accept how badly she screwed up and not try to excuse her behavior. She could basically take a guilty plea and throw herself on the mercy of the court. Or option two, follow the unfaithful's handbook and try to minimize both the issue and the damage. As my phone powered back up, I weighed the odds, and while I hoped for option one, I loved her deeply once and knew her all too well, it was probably going to be option two. There were tons of missed calls and texts from her, and the analyst in my head carefully noted the first call from the home phone was shortly after my hasty departure. I smiled a bit thinking I had ruined his evening before the analyst pointed out that he may have spent the night there since I was missing in action. Mistrust in someone is as cruel mistress. The messages and missed calls didn't stop until nearly dawn. I drunk myself into a coma long before that. I decided to wait till after our live conversation to listen to the night. Probably wasn't going to matter much anyway. Her phone rang exactly once before she answered. "Oh my God, are you all right? I've been trying to call you all night, and you never answered." I wasn't in the best frame of mind, Diane. I couldn't talk to you without losing control. I understand that, and I'm sorry. Okay, Diane, I've had time to think, and some time to get my anger under control. I am going to give you this chance to tell me whatever you need to say. She started with the cheater's classic line. It wasn't what it looked like. So, you're saying that when I walked up and saw you laughing and leaning into him like that, I somehow misunderstood? What? You just tripped into his arms or something. I know how bad it must have looked, but I didn't know what I was doing. I'd had a lot to drink, and maybe he spiked my drink or something. I was watching you for a long while before that, Diane. He wasn't forcing you into anything, and you weren't drinking that much either. There was a pause before she asked, "How long were you there?" "I got there just after you did. I watched you with him for a long time, Diane. Too long, really." I told her I had watched her ignore my first try at saving us, and then lied to me when she answered the last. I told her that even though I knew she had probably already had sex with him, that we might have had a chance if she just would have stopped and come back to me. But watching her blow me off and go straight to her lover ended any chance of that. She began to cry then, and for a second my resolve wavered, but just for a second. The analyst noted there was no denial of having had sex with him. She started going through the cheater's all-time hit list then, leading with that old favorite, "It didn't mean anything." If she believes that, then there is no way to get over this. Her fidelity and my trust in her mean the whole world to me. If sleeping with another man didn't mean anything, then we are doomed. It should have made her feel so bad that she would have stopped. Matter of fact, the first time she kissed another man, or let him feel her up, or anything on a long list of inappropriate acts for a married woman to do should have meant a great deal to her and stopped her before we got to this point. When I shared that opinion with her, she didn't have a good answer, so she queued up the next top hit with a good old, "I never meant to hurt you." I answered that with, "You never meant to hurt me. Really, what in the hell could have convinced you that I would not be hurt by what you were doing? You may not think you meant to inflict pain, but there is no way you can spin it where when I found out that I would not be hurt by it. That is just an excuse to ease your guilty mind." A pause followed as that one sunk in. And after the short break, we get treated to that old standard, "But I don't love him." I love you. You don't love him. You love me. That is pretty much laughable. Oh, I can buy the not loving him part. He was way too young to be a permanent addition. Now for the part where you say love me. Well, you may say it, but your actions show something else altogether. No one that cared for someone, let alone loved them, would act like you did. Sorry, I'm not even partly convinced of that. But you have to understand it was just sex. It was just sex. Did you really just say that? I mean, really, it isn't just sex. It's a death blow to faith and trust and love. If you believe that having sex with another man isn't a big deal, then what would count? Would it take having sex with more than one? Wait, have you done that yet? Never mind, it doesn't matter anyway. What if I told you I had sex with my assistant? Would that be a big deal to you? I can see how stupid that sounded. Please give us another chance. I'll never do anything like that again. You'll never do anything like that again. You may be telling the truth. Then again, you may not be. How would I ever know for sure? I would have to monitor everything you did for a long time, if not forever. No, that's not going to fly. I won't be a jailer or a cuck. You killed my faith in you, and there is no coming back. What made you do it anyway? Or do I even want to know? A long silence from her end tells me she knows I am right. Her sobbing is all I hear for a while before she says it was just something I needed to get out of my system. Just something I had to do once. Just something you needed to get out of your system. Is that a one-time thing like chicken pox? Or is something more often like a seasonal allergy? This is just like I'll never do it again. You felt the need to do it once. The fear would be with me for life that you would feel the need again. Sorry, try another tune. I won't dance to this one. It all just got out of control. It was supposed to be a one-night fling, and then we'd be back to normal. You were never supposed to know about it. I was never supposed to know. So that makes it okay then. What I don't know won't hurt me, right? You can have sex with anyone you wish, and as long as I don't know, there's no harm. Bullshit pure and simple. This goes back to the never meant to hurt you thing. It's a lie you tell yourself to make it okay. Baby, I know now how badly I screwed up. I know we can get through this. I don't want to lose you. You know we can get through this. Finally, something I agree with. We will get through this all right. No, not together, but as newly single people. You don't want to lose me. Seems I lost you when Sophia took over. You lost me the first time you were with another man. We were over when this began. I didn't fully understand it until last night, but you left me months ago. I guess I cramped your freedom too much, and Sophia showed you how to have fun again. You have the freedom to do whatever you wish now. We are done as a couple. You killed any chance at having a life together, and divorce is our only future. You're free now to go and have fun. At that, she began to scream as if she was in pain, and I hit the button to end the call. Then I pressed the power button to shut down the phone. For me, there was only the process of getting unmarried ahead of us now. She had said her piece, and I had said mine. She didn't seem to see it as a big deal, and for me it was. Sure, there were options like counseling and therapy and all that, but most of the good that could have done would have been before she gave herself to another man. Her thoughts were different, of course. She fought the divorce several ways. First, there was court-ordered counseling. Talk about a waste of time and money. Even the counselor told her there didn't seem to be any way I could go back to trusting her. She fought over terms and conditions just to delay it until I agreed to sign any settlement she offered. She cried, begged, and promised anything if I would try again. But what's a promise from a liar worth really? She never seemed to understand the one point. I tried to drive home time and time again. It simply could not work without trust. I still loved her, probably always would, but I'd never be able to trust her. The other huge, like 300-pound gorilla in the room was even though I still loved her, or at least a memory of her, there was no way to erase the pictures in my mind. There was never going to be a time when we tried to make love that her face wouldn't look like it did that night in the bar and bring it all back down on me. So there you have it. No burn the bitch. No scorched earth. No retaliation. None of that changes anything. She still gave herself to him. He screwed my wife, and her friend helped her choose the wrong path. All that will be the same even after some devious revenge. The only thing that would change is you. You become the monster. You are the madman. Now let's listen to Diane's story. It's mostly my fault if that happens, because I'm still struggling to make sense of it myself. Brian described me pretty well in his telling of my fall. At least physically. Mentally, well, I don't think he could do that as well as he did the physical part. It's hard for me to do this. Looking back for me means remembering a lot of things, ugly, painful things that I did. Looking forward is no better for me most days. So I might as well do this. I have come to see my life as the three faces of Diane. I'll try to explain what I mean by that in what follows. The first face. My first face is the one I wore most of my life. It wasn't ugly, nor was it beautiful. At least I didn't think it was when I saw it every day in my mirror. Like too many women, I was always focused on my own perceived flaws. If I was completely honest, I'd say I was at best pretty. I did like my eyes and my nose was small and feminine. However, every time I looked in the mirror, and especially when I applied lipstick, my mouth looked just wrong. I had what they call a weak jaw or something like that. It wasn't that bad really, but my lower jaw didn't line up with my upper, so I had an overbite and it made me look buck-toothed. Sure, it had been this way all my life. It is a shared family trait that we all had, but that didn't change how I saw it. I was convinced if I had the surgery I talked to the doctors about, that it would make me more attractive. It's hard growing up like I did. 5 kids and 2 busy parents means we had to compete for their attention. Limited budgets meant having to compete for their money too if we needed clothes or shoes or whatever. Add to that the onset of hormones and the first attractions to boys, and it sucks not being that girl. Oh, you know the girl I'm talking about. She's the one that every boy in the room sees within seconds of her entering it. She's the one we lesser girls watch as the heads of the boys. We were just talking to follow her across the room. Best case is they at least look a little guilty when they look back. Worst case is they just wander off and leave you without looking back. I never had the nice clothes, cute shoes, salon nails, or anything that I didn't have to have. I looked and felt by every standard I could apply just plain or at best average. Boys in the early days were all too easy to figure out. They were willing to talk to me and even flirt or date me as long as one of those girls was not around. I found out pretty early I was not their dream girl, but they figured I'd be easier to get. When they didn't get what they wanted, they just wandered away without looking back. I'd gotten burned by too many boys too quickly in my youth and had issues being able to trust. I was too used to being some kind of temporary thing until a better something or someone came along. And then there was Brian. He was good-looking, charming, funny, and nice. So, he was way out of my league, right? Then why did he seem so different? Here for the first time in my life was a guy that when we were talking didn't seem to notice when that girl walked in. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't trust it. I kept the usual walls in place and didn't let him get too close. I figured if he didn't get the sex he wanted, he would walk away like all the others. But he didn't wander off. I'd watch him sometimes when he didn't know I was there. When that girl would walk through the room, his head followed her just like all the guys. But when he was talking with me, he didn't seem to notice her. Could he really be that interested in plain old me? We dated, we danced, we kissed, and I fell in love. Or at least I was sure that's what I felt. Thinking about it now and writing it down, I'm not sure. But there is little I am sure of now. I wasn't a virgin when I met Brian, nor was he. Truth is, he probably had more experience than I did, or at least more pleasurable ones. I'd been screwed by 3 boys in my life before Brian, but I felt like a virgin in one important way. I had never had anyone make love to me. Yes, I'd had sex or gone all the way, as they say, but they didn't care about me. They just wanted to get in my pants. Brian was the first and still the only person I can say actually made love to me. From the first time we made love, I knew that this was how it should have always been. He talked to me while he kissed me forever before starting to undress me. So many different ways of being kissed. He kissed me softly, hungrily, open mouth tongues wrestling, and then softly again. He gently kissed my lips, then moved to my neck and ears, eventually trailing down. I almost stopped him before he could reach my down. I've always disliked how I looked, especially my chest and chin. Thankfully, those insecurities could be hidden behind loose clothing or a padded bra, but I couldn't hide from someone seeing the real me. Still, he didn't seem to notice or care. He spent what felt like an eternity focused on me, showing patience and care in a way I hadn't experienced before. His gentle touch and attention made me feel something I never thought possible, a deep sense of connection and acceptance. I had always been afraid of being truly seen, but his actions were different. He didn't rush, and he wasn't demanding anything. He focused on making sure I was comfortable, which was a completely new experience for me. For the first time, I let myself relax. The walls I'd built around my insecurities started to come down, and I realized I didn't need to be perfect for him to care for me. I was so lost in the moment, completely absorbed by the sensations, that I didn't realize he was shifting closer until I felt his gentle touch near my waist. I'd heard others talk about moments like this, how intimacy could bring an overwhelming sense of connection and care. Still, I couldn't help but feel a little self-conscious. What if I wasn't as perfect as I hoped? I made sure to take care of myself, but self-doubt crept in. What if I wasn't enough? Those thoughts swirled in my mind, but as his warmth and tenderness surrounded me, all my worries faded away. The questions that once seemed so important simply disappeared, replaced by a profound sense of trust and comfort. When I was once again in the real world, after what had to be the best climax a girl could ever have my eyes open to see him looking into them, damn, how long was I gone for anyway? But those eyes said more than all the words we had ever exchanged. Those eyes said he wanted me, he wanted to please me, and he wanted to share pleasures with me. They said they cared about me, maybe even loved me. His eyes never left mine as he moved closer, the tension between us palpable. He bent down and kissed me gently, holding me in that moment. Instead of rushing forward, he paused, just close enough to feel the depth of our connection. He kissed me more passionately, his lips moving from my neck to my mouth, creating a rhythm of affection that felt genuine and tender. In that stillness, I finally felt the full weight of his presence in my life.